Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Welcome back to the Science of Hockey. I'm the analyst, and today we're going to take a closer look at what separates the best from the rest when it comes to elite adolescent hockey players. We'll be diving into an insightful article titled Talent Identification in Elite Adolescent Ice Hockey Players. The discriminate capacity of fitness tests, skating performance, and psychological characteristics, published in the journal Sports. In this episode, we'll discuss how fitness tests, skating abilities, and psychological factors play a role in identifying the top young hockey talents. We'll explore what characteristics make certain players stand out during evaluation camps, and how a holistic approach to assessing talent could improve player selection. Whether you're a coach, parent, or player, this episode will shed light on the science behind discovering the next hockey stars. So, lace up your skates, and let's get into it.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today, we're getting into something that I think a lot of you have probably wondered about over the years. What are scouts looking for when they're evaluating young hockey players? Those critical teenage years where so much is on the line. We've got this really fascinating study from 2022 that was published in the journal Sports. And what makes this one so cool is that they actually teamed up with Hockey Quebec, so they got to evaluate both male and female players, which really gives us some interesting points of comparison.
Yeah, it gets right to the heart of talent identification, doesn't it? Not just like what makes somebody a good hockey player in general, but what gets you noticed in those pressure cooker tryout situations.
Absolutely. So almost 200 players between the ages of 14 and 16 went through this super in-depth evaluation. We're talking fitness tests, on-ice drills. They even did personality assessments. When you just look at that initial setup, what jumps out at you?
Well, I think the first thing is just how comprehensive it was. They were trying to capture so much more than just like how fast a kid can skate or how hard they can shoot. They took like anthropometric measurements, just gives you a snapshot of their physical build. Then they went deep into different aspects of athleticism. So lower body power, aerobic capacity, upper body strength.
So they're really trying to paint a complete picture of each player's physical capabilities. Yeah. And how did those results actually stack up between the boys and the girls?
Well, as you might expect, the boys tended to outperform the girls in most of the physical tests. But here's the catch, and this is what was interesting to me. There weren't significant differences based on position within either gender.
So whether you were a forward defenseman goalie, it didn't matter that much at this stage.
Exactly, at least not within this elite group. It seems like at this age, that foundation of all-around athletic ability is maybe what's most important.
Which makes sense. They're still developing, honing those specific skills.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned personality assessments, which is not something you typically think about when we're talking about scouting hockey players.
It's an area that's gaining more attention, though. For this study, they used the Big Five inventory, which looks at those broad personality traits like extraversion, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and so on. And that's where we start to see some really intriguing differences between the genders, actually.
Oh, fill me in. What kind of differences?
Well, the girls scored significantly higher in extraversion, conscientiousness, and openness. And I think this might be a key to understanding how talent manifests differently in boys versus girls. Perhaps certain personality traits become even more vital for female players to kind of stand out at this level.
Okay, that's a really interesting point. It really challenges the notion that it's all about brute strength and speed. Okay, so let's get to the heart of what this study was trying to figure out. They weren't just measuring performance. They were trying to see what actually predicted which players got selected for Team Quebec.
Right, and this is where it gets really fascinating. Because the formula differed so much between the genders. For the females, it was very clear-cut. Lower body power, upper body strength running abilities, speed and agility, all of it played a big role.
So to get noticed as a female player, you really needed to be that true all-around athlete.
Pretty much. But for the males, None of the models were definitively predictive.
Wait, none. That's surprising. So were the scouts just going with their gut?
It's possible,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it points to something a little deeper. Some factors did tend to be associated with selection for the males, things like muscular strength, aerobic capacity, skating, agility, and grit. But it wasn't as strong a correlation as we saw with the females. And one theory is that maybe because the pool of elite female players is smaller at this age, those tests are more accurate in predicting their selection.
Oh, interesting. So smaller pool. The standouts are easier to pick out, but for the boys, much bigger field. So those physical attributes alone may be not enough.
Exactly. And that's where those less tangible qualities, the ones that are harder to measure, might start to come into play. Things like hockey sense decision-making, under pressure leadership qualities.
So for the boys, maybe those less tangible aspects were tipping the scales.
Possibly. And that takes us to some of the most fascinating findings from this study, the psychological factors.
Yeah.
And how those play into this whole talent evaluation process.
Okay, so let's unpack those psychological findings. You mentioned grit earlier. How did that play out in the selection process?
Well, for the males, grit emerged as a really strong indicator. And it makes intuitive sense, right? Hockey's a demanding sport, requires resilience, perseverance, the ability to bounce back from setbacks.
Absolutely. You're constantly battling for the puck, getting knocked down, facing tough opponents.
And it seems like, at least for the boys, this ability to stick with it, to persevere through those challenges, was being picked up on by the evaluators. It might even be that grit is being unconsciously factored into their decision-making, even if they're not explicitly looking for it.
So grit might be giving those boys an edge, even if it's not something you can measure on a stopwatch or with a jump test.
Exactly. And that leads us to the question of how these psychological factors were playing out in this selection of the female players. Yeah. So for the girls, agreeableness,
Right.
conscientiousness, and neuroticism all seem to play a pretty big role.
Okay, so I'm really curious how those specific traits actually translate to success on the ice. So let's break each one down. What about conscientiousness? How does that factor in?
Well, you think about the qualities that go along with conscientiousness, being disciplined, organized, having that drive to achieve. These are all attributes that would benefit any athlete, really.
Sure. I mean, those are the players who show up prepared. They put in that extra effort. They really pay attention to the details. They're probably the ones who are taking meticulous notes during those team meetings, too.
Exactly. And then you have agreeableness, which is
Right.
all about being a team player, cooperation, being supportive of your teammates. And hockey is such a collaborative sport.
Oh, yeah. You're not going to win many games with a team full of players who only care about their own stats.
That's for sure. And then there's neuroticism. Now, this one might seem a little counterintuitive at first. You might think, wait, isn't that like a negative trait? But remember, we're talking about tendencies here, not extremes. A little bit of neuroticism can actually be a real asset.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, like a healthy dose of anxiety that keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. A bit of anxiety can mean that you're more attuned to potential threats, more aware of your surroundings. It can also fuel that desire to improve, to avoid making mistakes.
Interesting. So for the girls, it seems like this combination of conscientiousness, agreeableness, and that touch of neuroticism might have been what gave them an edge, at least in the eyes of these evaluators.
That's what the data suggests. And this is where things get really thought-provoking. Because this study, while it was really comprehensive, it only focused on performance at the camp itself. Very controlled environment. But in the real world of hockey, you've got this whole other layer to consider.
Right, game footage. All those games these players have been a part of. I mean, you can't capture everything in a few days at a tryout. So what's your take on how much weight game performance should carry compared to these standardized tests?
It's a great question. And it's something I think all scouts wrestle with. A player might excel in drills, have all the right physical attributes, even score high on those personality tests, but then they crumble under pressure in a real game situation.
Or the opposite, someone who isn't the flashiest at tryouts, but then when the puck drops, they just come alive. They've got that it factor, that instinct for the game that's hard to quantify.
Exactly. And that's the part of talent evaluation that I think, at least for now, still relies heavily on human judgment. There's no perfect formula, no algorithm that can fully capture those intangible qualities that make a player truly exceptional.
So what does this all mean for somebody who's trying to make sense of hockey talent? Whether you're a coach, a scout, or even just a passionate fan.
I think the takeaway here is that talent is just incredibly multifaceted. We've seen that the predictors of success can vary between genders, that both physical and psychological attributes matter, and that those less tangible qualities, the ones that don't show up on a spreadsheet, can make all the difference.
It's a reminder that we can't just look at the numbers. We need to appreciate the complexity of these athletes and the journey that they're on.
Absolutely. And as we delve deeper into this world of sports and talent, I think it's important to hold on to that sense of wonder, that recognition that there's always more to learn, more to discover, more to appreciate about these incredible athletes.
It's been a fascinating deep dive into this world of hockey talent, from vertical jumps and sprint times to personality traits and the importance of grit.
And it's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the whole scouting system, doesn't it?
It does.
How do you balance those objective measures with the more subjective, observations?
Right. That's the art and the science of talent development, right?
Right.
You need the data, but you also need that human element,
Yeah.
the intuition, the experience, the ability to see beyond the numbers and recognize those intangible qualities that can really make a player special.
Yeah, like leadership, hockey sense, anticipation. Those are so hard to quantify. But man, they can change a game.
Exactly. And those things might not even fully blossom until later in a player's development, which is why it's so important to create a system that really nurtures talent over the long term.
Well, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive. We went from, vertical jumps and sprint times to personality traits and the importance of grit. Who knew there was so much to consider when we're talking about hockey talent?
It really is a testament to the complexity of human performance, isn't it? And a reminder that there's no magic formula.
Absolutely. So to all you aspiring hockey stars out there, keep training hard, keep developing your skills, and never underestimate the power of your mindset.
And for all of you who are just passionate about the game, I encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep diving deeper into this world of sports and talent. There's always something new to discover.
That's for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep playing it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.